Greetings and great Friday afternoon, Friday evening, everybody. And welcome to the Hearts of Men podcast hosted by the Empowering Perspective community. We are your host for this evening show. My name is Dwayne Dwyer, the mindset coach. Over there, we got Mr. Uncle Junior himself. And below me, you see the son of Timothy. Being with us soon, we will have Mr. Rolling down the street there, always on cue. You know what I'm saying? Got to make an entrance. I love him. Rolling down the street again. And again, we just want to thank you guys for being here this evening. I'm sorry my voice sounds a little raspy. I'm just not getting over a bug, but that's all right. We're going to keep it pressing. And as you can see, my man Roland, he's suffering a little bit as well. But as we have already promised you, we are here to serve you. Rain, sleet, or snow, we'll be here. So, as always, welcome to the show. Welcome to the chat. We greatly appreciate seeing you guys. If this is your first time with us, by all means, go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and share it with somebody else, somebody who you think will find value in this evening's conversation, and go ahead and announce your presence. We love shouting you guys out in the chat room. The chat room. This is probably one of the most livest chats you'll ever experience. And trust me, they do not disappoint. They add such great value to the show. And again, for all you guys who are out there who I cannot see, again, welcome to this evening show. I've rambled long enough. Gentlemen, how are you?
Man, I'm well, man. Today was, well, actually, yesterday was the last day of school for the kiddos. If anybody don't know, I work in elementary school. So, winter break is here. Had to work today, had to go into the building, and then Monday and Tuesday we get to work from home. So, I get a break.
Hmm. Who was that racing down the street? Tell him to cut it up. No, I'm joking. No, I got it, man. I don't keep track of the school schedule no more. All my kids are pretty much grown. They're adults and working. But no, man, I know you're excited. And shout out to all the school teachers out there. Everybody who serves in the school community, man. Hats off to you. You are doing a job that we don't give enough attention to. So I would just want to extend my appreciation to everybody who works in the school system, whether you're a teacher, administrator, counselor, whatever that looks like. We appreciate the things that you do because we all understand that the children, as the prophet Whitney Houston says, the children are the future. Rolling, young Timothy, how you guys doing, man?
Man, I'm doing good, man. I don't work in the school system. I work on posts. I deal with soldiers all day, but you know, it's a blessing. And I'm not gonna say a curse. It's a blessing, and we're making it. My family's healthy. Kids are healthy. We're doing good, Coach.
Well, I'm doing all right as far as can be. Coach, I don't know, he gave me his sickness, his virus over the phone the other day. And I've been feeling it for the past couple of days, hot and cold, but we pressing on.
Well, I do work in the cyber community, so who knows? Got to get your cybersecurity up, right? Again, welcome to the show. Shout out Michelle Ray, Cassandra, Michael Haynes. Good to see you, sir. Charlotte Jordan, how you doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Uncle Junior smiling. Look at him every time. Got him. All right, listen. Listen, if you guys didn't catch it the last time, Uncle Junior get nervous whenever we give his mom a shout out. We appreciate moms on the Empowering Perspective community. So by all means, just make sure that you just tell us hi. We'll make sure that we extend a warm welcome in return. So here we are, another Friday evening for
Mm.
an amazing conversation. And this conversation is about functioning in dysfunction. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and set the conditions for this conversation because we kind of had a little talk before the show, and this is going to be I think it's going to be a lengthy conversation. So I'm just going to set the conditions right now. We may not get finished with this whole conversation this evening. That's okay. We'll go ahead. Thank you. We'll go ahead and probably roll it over to next week. And what I'm going to say right now, because I'm in the spirit, I believe that I'm gonna give away a free gift at the end of this entire segment. So if we go into next week, you might want to be present next week as well because the question may come from this week, it may come from next week. Who knows? But whoever gets the question answered correctly, that will give them a free gift. So with that being said, like I said, we're going to talk about functioning in dysfunction. Now, Gentlemen, I know because we talked about it previously. When we initially talked about this title, our head just started spinning. We had all kinds of thoughts, things of that nature. And so, me, I like to set the conditions first, right? Because I know we say I have a dysfunctional family, and I want to start off by saying everybody has a dysfunctional family. I don't care who you are. I want to make sure that that's clear. Everybody has a dysfunctional family. So as we look at the definition of dysfunction alone, the definition is abnormality or impairment in the function of a specific bodily organ or system, deviation from the norms of social behavior in a way regarded as bad. Lastly, the prefix dys means difficult, impaired, abnormal, or bad. So I like to set this conversation off because I think everybody that's probably listening to me may have done this, right? We have butter knives in the kitchen, and a butter knife is used for spreading butter. Now, with that being said, how many different functions have we found for the butter knife? Well, I may have used it as a screwdriver in the past. I may have used it as a crowbar to pry something open. I mean, just think about it. Spread some type of sandwich spread. Like we have literally used several functions for the butter knife. But let's be honest. Let's be honest. The butter knife is used for spreading butter. So when we look at it from that perspective alone, that helps us to understand that we are accustomed to functioning in dysfunction, especially just using that simple analogy. Now, because we're not going to stop there, we like to give our experiences. So I'm going to call on these young men first. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a reflection and we're going to identify dysfunction that took place within our life. And I'm not going to put any type of limitations on them wherever they want to talk. That's where we're going to go. So, gentlemen, by all means, share with me the dysfunctions that you have experienced in your lifespan.
I think I'll jump out there. One of the ways that dysfunction I can reflect back on in my life was because I was the only male in the house with a bunch of women. I was quote unquote the man of the house, but I didn't understand responsibility. I didn't understand what being a man was supposed to entail. I didn't have the proper tools and guidance to actually be a man at the time. But because I was a male child, it was thrust on me, and the responsibility was supposedly there. Yet I didn't pay anything. I couldn't chastise anybody, you know. So yeah, that was one way.
Um, I'll speak from an ex marriage, and some accountability part of that. I was operating in like dysfunction because like some of the same things that Roland talked about. I didn't really know what I was doing. I'm out there in the marriage, got married at 20 years old. I'm out there just a flapping. You know what I mean? So um I didn't really know what I was doing. I would say that I think early on in my life, my elementary and probably middle school years, I think from what I saw from my parents' marriage, everything was pretty cool. It wasn't until later on and I started getting a more understanding where I saw things turn. But early on, I think we had a good base. We went to church all the time, and I mean all the time, and then again, and then all the time. So I think we did have a good baseline. But like as far as me being in my relationship in my marriage, I was definitely operating in dysfunction. Like I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to lead or follow whatever position I was in at the time. Didn't have a code or a good way of parenting or being a husband. Like so I was totally operating in dysfunction. And then at the same time, I'm trying to be in the army. You know what I mean? So all of that while doing that, deploying and all of those things, and it was a it was bound. The divorce was bound to happen.
Hmm.
I was operating in dysfunction and I wasn't in alignment with anything. So, since I wasn't aligned with anything, when I became out of line, then everything up under me, because I'm the head of the house, is going to be out of line as well. So, that was me.
Yeah, I like where you went with that because I think I want to go a different route. Um, and the route that I want to go is that I probably, because just like you guys, right, I did not have a good, stable understanding of what my functional proficiency should look like. I didn't necessarily have the right person that actually guided me into manhood. I didn't have anybody tell me what a marriage looked like. I didn't have anybody tell me how to be a father. I could look at different people, different men be fathers, but I mean, you don't see everything. You only see the things that they allow you to see. But I'm gonna go another direction with it. I was operating in financial dysfunction. I had no one ever taught me anything about financial responsibility. Nobody ever taught me the value of a dollar. Nobody ever taught me, like, should, once you get paid, what are some of the things that you should do? Like, I had no clue about how to take my money and divide it into thirds and then use a third to pay this, use a third to do this, and then put a third over here. Nobody ever talked to me anything about that. Nobody ever talked to me about the rule of 72 when it came down to, eliminating debt and none of these things. I did not understand the snowball effect. I was clueless on some things, and I think we talked. This was probably about a month, maybe a month and a half ago, when it came down to going to college. Listen, I told you guys the minute I got in college, they sent me a pre-approved. I think it was Discover. Man, I went off. I went ahead and got that Discover card. I went straight to JC Penney's and got the swiping. I had no limits whatsoever. I had no type of discipline when it came down to finances. I had no direction. And I think Michelle Ray is absolutely right. It's a cultural thing, right? It's not something that is taught on a regular. And I think one of the things that we have to get after is making it a norm to have early conversations about things like this. Um, young Timothy, you good? You good to go now?
Yeah, pray for me. I explained to you my situation
I got you.
earlier.
I got you.
And hey, I light up the chat if it don't get itself together. Um, but I'm gonna take a different route too because I think y'all hit some important points, and I don't want to beat a horse uh, that are alive. So I'm gonna go and say my major dysfunction I learned in my life was when life began to gain some normality. All right. Uh, for me, it was when I joined the military. I had a steady paycheck. Things wasn't really rocky anymore. I wasn't living in the hood. I wasn't moving from place to place. I wasn't in group homes or shelters anymore. Life began to seem normal for the first time, and in that, I had no idea how to live life, and it sent me down a, another trail of depression because I felt like I was something wasn't right. I didn't know how to operate without our dysfunctions. And so I had to refigure out life and find some mentors and begin to live life like a normal person, right? That's something I had to learn in the process. And I'm just grateful for all my leaders in the military, all my friends and big brothers along the way that helped me figure out life as a man.
Yeah, that's good, and I agree with you. It was, and Roland, we've talked about this in the past. We've had some great leaders that kind of helped us with a lot of those things, and we mentioned a few: Tony Majors, Robert Johnson. Those guys were just awesome and very influential in some of our development as we went forth. So, as we dive into this, again, I want you guys to share with us, your dysfunctions in the chat because again, we like to incorporate the chat into our conversations. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ron. You got something else?
Yeah, I have a caveat. Uh, I think since we are talking to young men, another dysfunction for me was uh was sex because I was always a shy kid, but the female, the opposite sex, would always press on me, and I would be like, no, no, this, that, and other. But it came a point to where I did experience it finally, and when I did experience it, it didn't take long before next thing you know, somebody mama calling my mom talking about she pregnant because sex, I knew what could happen, but I didn't understand sex and what it was supposed to be for. And when you don't understand something, you abuse it. That's why you have drug abuse, spouse abuse, also sexual abuse. And that, at 13, 12, 13, 14, doing things that I ain't had no business doing. But once you get that feeling, I knew it felt good to me. And so I go off a feeling and think that the feelings and the emotions are tied with responsibility. But then when the child is coming, I had no earthly idea of the responsibility that was to come.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
man. I'm a piggyback off this. That's okay, Coach.
yeah. Go ahead.
Um, yeah, I think this kind of goes back to what I've heard Coach say before. When you go out there and something don't work out with you, the person you would. From the first thing that sometimes men tend to do is they get out there and they start going fishing. You know what I mean? Because that's kind of what I did every time. Like I say, every time me and my first wife split up. That's what I did. That was the thing to do. That's what I thought made me feel better and what I mean, satisfied my appetite at the time because it's like, well, there was a way for me to, I guess in a way, kind of sort of stroke my ego and make me feel better about the situation that I had just come out of, and it was, it probably, I ain't gonna say toxic, but it wasn't healthy, at the end of the day. And then, I would tell this, you can do what you want to do, but at a certain point, even running the streets like that, that's still like a lonely life. At least I was like, I had different women, but like you go to bed, a lot of times you by yourself, and a lot of times during the day you by yourself because they off doing their thing, you off doing your thing. So um I was still lonely, and it never was really fulfilling. You know what I'm saying? So I can definitely agree how at least I was operating in dysfunction when it came to those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I don't think anybody on this panel is exempt from that. Um, So great question, Erica. Give me a second. Be patient with me. I think you're going to see that this conversation every Friday night really gets after that question that you asked. That's one of the primary reasons that we're here every Friday night. And just so that, everybody on the panel can see it. Her question is, how have you mentored young adults to recognize their dysfunction? What I mentioned previously, I'm not sure if you was on in the beginning, but what I mentioned previously is that this conversation is probably going to be a 2-week conversation. And they agreed with me out the gate when I showed them how I had it set up. And I think what you're going to see is that this is going to be a stair step, starting all the way from childhood going into adulthood. So, with that being said, I want to continue as we press forward. Now, we gave our reflection, and I appreciate you guys who gave your reflections of your life as we progressed in this conversation. But now I want to introduce a concept of identity dysfunction. Just keep in mind the word dysfunction we described as abnormality or impairment in the function of a specified bodily organ or system, deviation from the norms of social behavior in a way regarded as bad. And the prefix of dys, means difficult, impaired, abnormal, or bad. And what I want to make sure that we discuss when we start talking identity dysfunction, I want us to understand that identity dysfunction simply means that I do not have a clear picture of who I was created to be. Now, I think as I say that, I think we can agree across the board that there are very few of us who had a crystal clear picture of who we were when we were young children, especially when we got to our teenage years. And again, one of the things I want to make sure that I point out, this is not to be confused with dissociative identity disorder. That is a clinical behavior disorder. In other words, that person needs to be treated. If you ever seen the movie Split, it kind of reminds you of that individual as that he went through the multiple stages of different personalities by the snap of a finger. That's not what this is. This is just simply not having a clear picture of who you are. So, with that being said, gentlemen, what I want to ask you real quick, um, when do you think you got a clear picture of who you really are, according to the creator?
Y'all just waiting on me, huh? Well, I think for me, it was probably about 3 or 4 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago when I started to dig more because you grow up, American history, African American history, Black history, and you grow up knowing the history in your community and people saying, calling you colored, they calling you black, they calling you Negro, they calling you nigger, and all this other stuff. But then you think, dang, who the heck am I? Who was I before the ships? Who was I before I came here and had a label placed on me? Before my family got the name Walker? Who was I? Then as I searched that, then I started to find out who I was, as the creator says, as you say. And for the question, uh, I had a group of young men, and I had them in a circle, and I told you guys this, and I asked them. I came in, I'm like, "Hey, where are my real niggas at?" And every last one of them raised their hand. And then I said, "No, you are not a nigga." That's one of the first things we got to get out of our young boys' mind. You are not anything negative, whether it be that, whether it be anything negative, because once you put those negative epithets on yourself, then everything that comes behind it brings negativity. So for me, it was about 4 years ago when I started to do my research and history of family and so forth and so on.
Mine, and then I'm gonna ask you something, Roland, too. Mine has been obviously right around the same time within the last 3 or 4 years. Right before, right before the pandemic is when I started like having questions, wanting to know more. Um, I did 20 years in the military, retired in 2017. And sometimes I wonder, my son asked me, probably sometime earlier this year or last year, do I think that the military stunted my growth? You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that it did, but I think what it did breed a lot of complacency in me because even though, once I finished chasing and I decided that I was going to, cut the gas off and retire, like, you know, I ain't really have any goals anymore. I was just trying to get to retirement and trying to get my retirement check and then relax. So do you think, Roland, you think that being in the military helped or hindered, what I mean, that development of figuring out who you were?
I think I would say it hindered because it was easy for me to be a soldier.
Yep.
I mean, get up, be in a uniform, look the part. But when it comes to finding out who I am, I'm used to people calling me Sergeant such and such, calling, like calling you used to calling people calling you Smoke. You go by titles. And when you leave the military, it's like, okay, these people ain't got to call me this title. Like when people, I had to get used to people calling me my first name.
Yeah, me
Family
too.
or whomever, like, what? Like, you don't know me like that. Call me like, oh, I'm not in the military. I did 22 years. So it's ingrained in you. And you learn to fit in, to blend in that rather than because you can't be an individual. And that's what makes it hard to find out who you are because individualism is looked down upon.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's what I was kind of thinking too. It wasn't that I wanted to, or that I want people to think that we were blaming the military. I think, it's more so just because of the structure and the way the military set up. It's not an individual place. It's not a place where you develop a lot of individuality,
Right.
and then it's easy to soldier. There's books and manuals and FM and doctrine to, what I mean, for all of those things to help keep you in line and keep you straight and keep you going towards either progression or retirement or whatever it is that you want to do. So the road is really pretty much the road. The road is literally already paved for you. All you got to do is follow X, Y, and Z, and you'll make the finish line.
Show up in the right uniform at the right time, you good.
Yep.
Go ahead, young Timothy.
Oh man, I would say for me it was a long path. Uh, Acceptance for me was about 2 3 years ago. Um, because just like y'all pointed out, being a soldier, one of the easiest things you could do. You got a free workout plan. You got you know what you're gonna wear every day, except for 2 days a week. You know where you're gonna be, what time you gotta be there. Um, but that time that you sit and you begin to focus and read and study, you realize that you are more than just a soldier. Whatever that means, chief, sergeant, major, sergeant, whatever that means, you're more than a soldier. And when you get back out into society, you realize I have to function in this society, but as what? And literally, I asked the exact same questions that Roland brought up. You know, I started doing a lot of digging into, Black history, and I realized Black history for us, you got slave ships, Harriet Tubman, Thurgood Marshall, then Martin and Malcolm, and then we just kind of faded and started blending into the society. Well, who were we before we blended? We talk about cultural appropriation, but what was our culture? Who were we? You know, and I watched a video one time, and it broke down that there are three Hebrew words that we heard all our lives, didn't even know they were Hebrew. It was kum, ba, ya. When I found out that was here, I said, wait, so you telling me slaves who couldn't read or write English wrote a song in perfect Hebrew? And it says, come and arise, Yah. Well, who was Yah? And I found out that Psalm 68 tells us to praise him by his name. Yah. And so, not to run on that rant, but that what that did for me is made me realize that we, just as every other culture, have the right to do things that benefit our people, that benefit our young men. Why are we always told to be blenders, blending this? What he said on Five Heartbeats? I'm not gonna go.
Please don't bring
But
Five
why?
Heartbeats up again.
But I know. I'm not going. But real talk. He said, why we always the one crossing over? And that's really what when I started paying attention to stuff like that. And when I tell you, when I study and when I read and when I hear things and when I watch things, I have a more clearer focus on what I'm seeing because I learned who I was. I digress.
I like it. I like it. I'm I would say for me, it started right around 2013. And I was in Korea, to be honest with you. I was in my Yo MTV Cribs apartment, and I was sitting, I was sitting in my living room
Sing you in
overlooking.
cell barracks.
Yeah, man. I was sitting in my living room overlooking the patio and looking over Seoul and just sitting there thinking. And I started asking myself a series of questions. And as I was asking these questions, they weren't just surface level questions. They were questions that made me think about the answer, which was strange because I never really asked myself a question that I did not have an answer to. But I realized I didn't have the answer. And so the more I thought about these questions, I realized that I should know these answers. And then that kind of propelled me in a direction. Now I'm going to go a different direction with the military from what you guys brought up because I view it from a different lens. The military was um, probably one of the most important things in my life at that particular point in time that gave me structure beyond the structure that my mother provided me. And remind you that I was raised in a single parent home. So you know how we do, you know how we say, they did the best they could with what they had. And I know that to be a true statement. Once I got to the military, there was a different degree of structure. Now there were men standing in front of me telling me how to do this, what to do this, so forth and so on. So just like you said, you know what to wear, you know where to be, where you want to be. Was not only just that, when they say, hey, you guys got to wear dress, got to dress up today. You got to wear your dress uniform. I'm like, oh, okay. So now we're, wearing a suit. And I, of course, I was raised in the church, so that was secondary. But this is a different concept. We're going to military balls, so now they're teaching you the behavioral norms within that setting. You know what type of fork. Trust me, that's the first time in my life I ever ate with a salad fork. I didn't know the difference. To be honest with you, right? But that's an example of what I'm talking about. It gave me some sort of structure. Now, this is not me advocating for every child to join the military. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm saying is that children need structure, right? And in the midst of that structure does not end at a certain point. That structure continues because that structure then goes from their childhood into their adolescent years and then into their adulthood. And I think you guys can relate to what I'm saying because there were things that you did growing up that you brought into your house. Case in point for me, cleanup day, Saturday mornings. That's how it was when I was growing up. I still do that to this day, right? Because there's nothing wrong with it. It worked and it works for me. And I think that's important to understand. So when we start talking about when I came into that awareness, it was right around 2013. And the question that I asked is what did these men that I mentioned earlier, Roland, what did these men provide for you that you did not get at home? Well, the answer to that question was everything, because I did not have a man at home. I had the uncle brigade, and they were amazing. But then, by that same token, these men provided me with the necessary structure that I needed as a man. Now, could they have helped me be a husband? Nope, couldn't do it, because Timothy, the way that young Timothy is a husband is different from the way that Roland is a husband, which is different from the way that Uncle Junior is a husband. So for them to introduce their style to me could be perceived as intrusive, and under the army ethics, that's not the goal. The goal is to condition people to the army standards. So in other words, me going through that phase of my life made me reflect on the standards. And what I learned is that as a man, I didn't know where my standards came from. I knew where my standards came from as a good person, but it was hard for me to identify where the standards came from as a man, let alone as a father, because mine was absent. So now when you look at it, it poses a different dynamic. And I wanted to kind of ask that question as we get into it, because that takes us to the challenges that are associated with identity dysfunction. So, gentlemen, please share with me your individual challenges and the challenges that you've observed in this society today.
I would say some of it has to do with I would just speak about some of the young men. I have three sons. So a lot of times, they'll look at TV and social media and they say, this is what, I'm supposed to look like. This is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to dress this way. I'm supposed to wear my hair a certain way. um, and I'm all for individuality and all these different things. And I'm all for anything that whatever you do, if you get the end result that you want, then do you. No need to adjust or change. But a lot of these kids and a lot of these young people are looking at the wrong people for um, I don't want to say guidance. It's just kind of so they're just following them. So they have a certain dysfunction about how they're supposed to operate. And then as they go on, sometimes a lot of damage has been created and causes problems for later on down the road in life. I was listening to something on TV today, and some dude was in jail because he was protecting his sister from some man. So he was being taught that he protect all these women and different things like that. So when his sister called on him to go come and protect, he automatically just reacted, went and go handle his business without even having all of the information. So I think that and then this dude is in jail. So it's like, when you operate in this dysfunction and you listening and following people that maybe you shouldn't have, bad things can happen and you can end up living a life that you really didn't want.
I'm gonna jump on that with you, like because I think these last couple of generations they watch a lot of reality TV, whether it's Black Ink Crew or the Housewives that ain't nobody no wife and all that stuff, and it teaches them to show bad behavior. It teaches them no morals, no manners. If you have a big breast or a big butt and you're showing everything, it's like no decorum goes out the window. So now it's like that's why when you see people going to proms, it's like you gonna let your little 17, 16-year-old daughter go out the house showing everything. It's like, why? Because there's no proper men around. And if there were proper men around, somebody would say, no, you got to cover that up, baby. When you show concern for somebody outside of just telling them what to do, then they respect what you say more than just if you come around just to tell them what to do. So the dysfunction associated with the identification part is TV, radio. They get their identification not from their fathers and their mothers in the house, but from what they see on the social media, the TVs, and those things. And that's not necessarily a good thing because those people play a script.
Hmm.
Oh man, woo! This is a topic. I said it like that. I'm gonna say this, and this is what I wrote down when you first mentioned identity dysfunction. It made me first go back. Since we like to go start with coming off the slave ships, right? For us, well, in there we were stripped of identity as a people. Roland can know who Roland is in his role as a husband or in his role as whatever it is he does on his job. But as a people, there's a crisis with with identity or knowing who we are. And when you have no identity, you then eventually gain no value. So no identity equals no value, and no value equals no function. And when you don't have a function, we operate like we're talking today in dysfunction. We create and this is why we go to this idea of when you talk about how some of these girls dress going to prom. Well, because we don't have an identity, so we have no value. So who are you to tell me what I should or shouldn't dress like? Where is our because this new generation, they don't want to hear Big Mama's values. Because to them, the identity of husband and wife is destroyed to them. So they don't want to hear Big Mama's values because they think Big Mama was a fool for cooking every night and not pursuing $1 million. They think Big Mama was a fool because she sold and didn't go to the cleaners. You get what I'm saying? So where do we start? The problem is we don't even have the same baseline for values. So then how do we come together and tell uh, Pookie's daughter not to dress like that on the way to the prom? And don't let him be in jail because she definitely don't want to hear what you got to say. You ain't my daddy in jail.
Mm.
You get what I'm saying? So as I said, it's a conversation that can just go,
Yes, sir.
because we have so many, as a people, we have so many different avenues of dysfunction that is stemmed from identity dysfunction. And so we rely on the girls that are on Real Housewives. I'm sorry, I can't name drop. That's on these reality shows. Black girls out here trying to follow the Kardashians who are trying to look like them. Something is wrong.
Man, listen.
That,
This
that, that's
this this is why I love these guys because I'm gonna tell you, like, what I'm over here thinking. Roland hit it, Uncle Junior hit it, Young Timothy hit it as well. Um, for me, I because Roland, you mentioned TV, and Young Timothy, you mentioned TV as well. I'm gonna go a different route. I want to talk about social media because social media does a whole lot of teaching. And here's the thing: social media would teach your child the lesson that you refuse to teach them because you're too busy working and doing whatever it is that you think is more important than your child. Listen to me and listen to me well. The minute that we have children, they are our number one priority. They are the reason why I work. They are the reason why I do what I do. The reason why I exist is because I am supposed to train my child up in a way that they should go. That's it. The minute that I have a child, my job is to train that child up. And I'll be completely honest. I've said this before, and I'm gonna keep saying it because I need for us, like Timothy said, we need a baseline, right? They ain't even my child. That's not my child anyway. That child belongs to the all to the Almighty. I'm just the one that is being charged to raise the child up. That's the thing that we have to understand. So when we claim that our job is so important and all this other great stuff, and then when it comes down to the child is on social media, Instagram, TikTok, and I'm gonna say it. I got it. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, whatever other stuff out there, Snapchat, and any other kind of chat that exists. Somebody is teaching your child a lesson that you never introduced to them. I promise you, and I say this in all sincerity. I don't mean to be rude. I don't mean to be intrusive, but I'm telling you that's where it goes astray at that particular point. That's one of the main reasons why I believe wholeheartedly that elders in our community do not have a voice. When I was growing up, we respected our elders. We live under the concept that it takes a community to raise a child. When I left out the house, there was about 4 or 5 phone calls if I was down the street messing up. And by the time I got home, which I'd have been chastised about 3, 4 times getting home, my mom was at the door with the bell because they called her and told her I was on the way. We don't do that anymore. So when we start looking at the challenges that are associated with identity dysfunction, we got to first start with the parents. That's first. And then because the parents don't necessarily instill that identity, that proper identity that Roland talked about. And again, that identity comes from both mom and dad. And I remind you, we live in a society that actually praises being a single parent. And it's okay if the situation presented itself to where you had no choice but to be a single parent. But if you ever heard me and Onita conversate, it is your responsibility to reach out to that non custodial parent and say, hey, I don't know what we got to do, but we need to find a way to be amicable for this child. That child needs the both of us, not just me, not just you. And I think that's important. And if we can find a way to do that, the child will have a better opportunity in life, not at life, in life, because of us swallowing our pride, casting down and sacrificing our ego for the sake of the child. So when we start looking at our identity, one of the things I go back to is the butter knife. If you never knew it was a butter knife, you had no clue that you could use it to spread butter. You would just keep using it as a screwdriver, keep using it as a crowbar, and all that other great stuff. Well, when it comes down to us as people, if you don't know what your value is, then you would devalue yourself at the first opportunity that society has told you that you need to be in. So that's how you get into situationships. That's what I'm gonna call it, with people who don't mean you any good because you don't understand your value. I've said this before that value must be first assigned. A value is only assigned by the one that created you. You have to go and understand what that value is. It may take some research, it may take some teaching, it may take parents telling their children to sit down, read this, and let's discuss it afterwards so that we can grow. Once that value was realized, that's the second piece, right? You must first realize your value for you to even understand it. Once you realize it and understand it, now you can express it. So when you get to the point of expressing value, I don't devalue myself by wearing certain things that actually make others view me less than who I know that I am. So the challenges that are associated are just enormous. The challenges exist in behavior, the challenges exist in what we wear, the challenges exist in how we treat other people. And that's one of the things that has bothered me since I've seen it. I have not seen the respect for elders in a very long time. And it really gets under my skin. How can a 20 something year old, man or woman disrespect the senior citizen? Why is that even acceptable? We talk about protecting, we have a social responsibility to protect our seniors. And if we don't view it that way, then we're missing the mark. Go ahead, young Timothy.
Man, you hit something. and I'm gonna speak to my generation of parents, and mostly single mothers in my generation. I hate to say it that way, but it's true. So your child, you not only, like Coach said, need to teach your children these lessons and be involved in their lives, but some of us are heavily disrespectful to our own parents. Some of us are heavily disrespectful to community leaders. All they, we talked about, we always talk about why some kids grow up and boys grow up not liking their daddy because they hear their mama talking bad about daddy. That's cool. But when they see you disrespecting your elders, like our general, those of us who have children right now need to learn how to pay homage to our elders while they are here and while our children can see it, because that's what's hurting the next. You can have all the lip service you want, but if you are not going, we have, unfortunately, when you teach a lesson and you want someone to see something, you have to go out your way to show examples. Showing an example is more than being a good person. Sometimes you got to go out your way to being an example. And I'm just speaking for those of us, of 80s babies. We got to be purposeful. We got to be intentional about showing how important our elders are to our family. We got to be, and it's tough. We, those of us who are military, we raising our kids away from our families and stuff like that. But there's somebody older in your community. There's some first sergeant, sergeant major, or somebody, a sergeant first class that is willing to pour into your life if you're willing to open it up. And guess what? Honor those people in front of your children. Because I think where the mark is, these young kids don't see it. Because a lot of people my age got 20-something-year-old kids. I got 20-something-year-old nieces and nephews. You know what I'm saying? And they do not see us honoring our adults, our elders. They see us running our mouths. They see us repeating what my mama said. I'm not your child. Don't say nothing to me.
Hmm.
And our children are watching that, and they're not going to have no respect for us. Let's call a spade a spade.
Yeah, great point. I'm so glad you said that. And this is the point I was making. I knew that this conversation was going to be long, especially excuse me, especially when we get into the question piece, because the question is the part that really gets us going based upon everything that we talked about. So they look at me strange because I skipped something. I did it intentionally because y'all already covered it, right? So, so as a parent, how can I help my child with their identity?
I jump on that grenade. Uh, First, we have to help ourselves. We have to be honest that some of us, let's go outside of who we were. Even if you talk about before we got on slave ships, that's cool. But a lot of us don't even know our family history here. Some of us can't trace our family past mama or big mama. So we have to become students again. We have to become students. We have to begin to research and learn about who we are. There are people who have done major things for our community here in America, and we need to be able to know what those. I used to fuss at my wife, and I apologize if she watches it. When she watches this, I apologize. 6 years ago, I used to fuss because I used to complain that she read this one book to my son more than we read the Bible to him. But it was my job to come on the other side and read the scriptures to him. But she would read this book. I can't remember the name of it, and we
Green
still got
eggs,
it. It's at the house, huh?
green eggs and ham. No,
I knew you. I knew you was gonna say something petty. But um, it was it had quotes and stories about black people who have made a mark in America, and that was healthy for him to understand not just who he is, but the value of who we are here. So that as he moved, he didn't operate because a lot of us are operating mentally in a place to where we don't believe we are on equal playing fields mentally because we don't know that we had a Supreme Court justice that was black before the 2000s. Like we don't know that. I'm good.
I think another thing for us to, as parents, is stop lying to your kids. You wasn't perfect. You did some dirt. You was out there doing the stanky leg. You was out there listening to Luke. You were doing it. Cause come on now. And that's the problem. Cause we get older, then our kids out here doing some crazy stuff, and then we like, I never do. No, you did it. You was sneaking and creeping too. Your daddy snuck in your mama's window. You need to be truthful and upfront and show them the the do's and the don'ts, the good and the bad. And then it will allow them to see you as being like, man, okay, I see they went this route and it was a mistake. And if I go that route, I know it's gonna be a mistake too. So maybe I need not go down that route because like somebody said, you got big mama and they 40. Like I just turned 49 and oldest kid is 33. You know, oldest grandkid is how old is that boy? 14? 14. You know, oldest grandkid 14. So it's like, I'm papa, grandpa, but I ain't at the clubs and stuff. But I know some people my age that's out there. They don't call it a club no more. They call it a lounge. They at the cigar
Oh,
bar. They doing all these things, and they still trying to be cool. Which I'm still consider myself a cool granddad, but I ain't out here trying to I like motorcycles and stuff. So it's some stuff that I like to do, but I ain't out here trying to be young. It's a difference between you living and you trying to live like you are going backwards. So I think you be
I,
honest, open and honest with your children first and foremost.
I saw you try to do the stinky leg before. Don't lie. Tell the good and the
You know, I
bad.
done had too many foot surgeries.
nah, he just like
That's
to
a
beat up on his
crazy.
grandkids on Madden. Go ahead, Uncle Junior. What you got, bro?
Hey man, I kind of like we're rolling with stop lying to your kids, but I'm gonna take it a little bit different spin on it. You stop lying to your kids about they fake talents too. Like all of y'all kids can't sing, all of them can't dance, and y'all trying to push these kids into these spaces, and they just may not be good. You know what I mean? I think sometimes we as parents, man, we go overboard because we want our kids to succeed in a certain area that they may like, but they may not be good at. I see it on social media, and I'm just like, man, she really can't sing. The little girl really can't sing. I'm not saying that without no lessons or anything like that, she can't get better. However, that child grows up and, keep hearing you tell her that she can sing. And then she going after audition after audition after audition. And, what I mean? She's identifying as a singer and she really can't sing because no, now, she's developed this identity as a singer and she really can't sing and now she's not understanding why she's not, Beyonce or have a huge successful singer career. And I'm just using just that as an example, but I think that a lot of times, parents create this because they at sometimes may be trying to live out what they wanted through their children. And sometimes the children suffer for it because they have a false sense of their identity.
Hmm. Man, I love that. I really do love that, man, because I see that so much. Like
Mhm.
parents living vicariously through their child,
Yeah.
right? Just because you played high school football and you got hurt, you're gonna push your son Pee Wee, all that
Yeah.
other great stuff all up to high school, and he's just been the first string water boy.
Yeah, he can't play.
Yeah,
Second string, pull the
absolutely.
benches out, pull the
First, yeah,
pine needles out the bench.
first string water boy. Go shine the
Yeah.
helmets and hurry up and come back. Listen,
Shine the drums.
I'm gonna go a step further. I think, and this is just me, and some free chicken at the same time. Um, every belief system needs to be rooted in a doctrine of truth. I want to start there. If your belief system is rooted in your emotions, you are a bad teacher. That's all I got. I mean, that ain't all I got, but that's what I'm gonna start. I want to start there and drop the mic right there because I think that's enough to think about. If your
You,
belief system is rooted in your emotions, then you're a bad teacher. Like your belief system must be rooted in a doctrine of truth. After that, then if you're married, you and husband need to get together and talk about what raising kids look like. You need to understand how he thinks when it comes to raising kids. He needs to understand what you think when it comes to raising kids. And then if your information is a little skewed, work it out. Figure it out. Get to that point to where you have a clear understanding of what raising a child look like. Now I'm gonna be honest with you. You know, I got 4 kids and ain't none of them were planned, but I just did not know that I needed to have the conversation because nobody ever shared that with me. So this is what it is right here. Have the conversation about raising a child before the child gets here. That way you have a clear understanding. Because trust me when I tell you, a child will challenge the integrity of your relationship. When they get to a certain age, well, mama said this. Well, daddy said I can have this. Well, you said, and you said, well, daddy always do this right here, and daddy ain't even home. And so now it's the good cop, bad cop thing. So we need to understand what raising a child look like. We need to have a belief, we need to have a truth-based doctrine that our belief system is rooted in, and then we need to introduce that to the child, right? I'm just going to be transparent. I believe in the word of God. And with that being said, at a certain point, it is my responsibility to raise them up in the ways to go and then introduce them to who Christ is. That's my job as a parent. And if I do not do that, I just failed the child because I just guaranteed that adversity is going to happen. Like life happens. That's just what the truth is. But here's what we need to understand. The word no is not a bad thing. I've heard, I've struggled. I didn't have in my family didn't have nothing when I was growing up. So I don't want my child to go without anything. So whatever they ask me, I'm gonna get them. So there's some people right now that are in debt because they got Christmas boxes up under a tree stacked this high because everything that little Johnny and little Tamika put on their Christmas list, they got it. Even if it was an iPhone 17, which ain't came out yet. I'm telling you, don't do that to your child because you're setting the condition for failure in the future. So guess what their Christmas tree gonna look like? Just like yours. Guess what they're gonna I see you, Roland. Let me give it to you, brother. Guess what their tree gonna look like? Just like yours. Guess how they're gonna look at it? Just like you did. Guess how they're gonna raise their kids? Just like you did. This is why it's important, right? Telling a child no won't kill them. It builds resiliency. So when the world tell them no, they won't have a nervous breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
It's necessary. Give your child the tools that they need to be a successful adult. And success changes from person to person. I got it, right? But you set them up for failure because this is what I really do believe. When a child leaves the home, their ground floor should have been your ceiling. You should have given them the best of who you are before they left. Therefore, they're starting from where you are. Therefore, we are setting the conditions for them to be better. And then we sit back, we wait on them to call us and ask us questions. Daddy, I got a question for you. What's up, son? Hey, so I met this young lady, right? Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. This is my philosophy, and I'm gonna put this out there, and I know the dude's gonna jump at me as soon as I say it. I believe when my child has a problem with calling me about anything, it's only because they felt that I was unapproachable about that particular thing, or at any particular point in time, I probably set the conditions of perfection, like Roland said, and they don't want to feel like a failure when they come to me. So they will go to somebody else, YouTube or another person, Uncle Junior, right? And they say, hey, I need to talk to you about something. And then they talk to the wrong person about the thing when you, at that particular point in time, is supposed to be their mentor. As soon as they leave the nest, you're the first mentor. So they should call you about every question that they have in life. Why? Because all you did is train them up in the ways that they should go. If they got financial questions, call your mama, call your dad. Whoever was the best person in the house, that's who they're gonna call. When they got questions with, if it's a young man, if you got questions with women, call your daddy. If it's a young lady, if she got questions with young men, call your mama. Mom, I got a question. Daddy, I got a question. And then we have honest conversation. But we set the conditions for that early. Why? Because we connected with our children. What do I mean when I say that? That means that we actually took the time throughout any given day and sit down and talk to them. So just like you come home and ask your wife or ask your husband, honey, how was your day? You do the same thing with your kids. That's and COVID-19 taught us a great lesson. A lot of us don't even like being around our kids that much. That's an us problem. That's on us. When the school system said you got to teach your kids, like, yeah, we struggling. So let's be honest with ourselves. So that's the thing that we got to do. Get to the point to where we can have easy conversations with your children. And when I say easy, I don't mean simple conversation. I mean that conversation is easy. Like you can talk about any and everything. That way, when the hard stuff happens, they don't hesitate to come to you. I got long-winded. Roland, I think you were first, and Uncle Junior, take it.
Okay. I think we as parents, we tend to teach from a dysfunctional prism from the get-go, because we teach from what we knew, what our grandmothers taught our mothers, what our mothers taught us, how they disciplined. And then we say, well, it was good enough for me, so it's good enough for you. It's not that it was good enough, it's all they knew.
So they knew.
So sometimes you have to learn your way out of dysfunction, because when growing up, my grandmother would hit you with whatever she could reach, she was hitting you with it. Not proper, not right. Everything don't deserve me to get hit with a doggone frying pan or whatever. But she was disciplined in how she knew, and how she knew to get people to do what she needed done. Well, hey, I'll whip you, which came, that comes out of slavery and so forth and so on. So that's not necessarily the proper way to go, especially when we done built a bunch of sensitive kids. These kids are sensitive because we don't allow them to struggle. If they want to stop playing a sport, no, you ask to get in it. You're not stopping. You're going to finish it, continue it out. At the end of the year, if you don't want to do it, cool. But you're not just going to get in and get out because you think something is nice for the moment. If you put your hands and feet to something, you're going to work your way through it. And any adversity, you're going to have to deal with it. We don't teach our children adversity. We don't allow them to fail. We don't allow them to find themselves and see how they can fail forward and find other ways and other avenues to actually grow.
I think one of the things that we can do is help our children with their identities, just to be an example of what right looks like, and and being honest. We as parents, we're going to get it wrong sometimes. We're going to make mistakes. I think it was Roland, I think, said, being upfront and being honest about that stuff. I mean, we all got skeletons in the closet. We all got stuff that we did that we may not be proud of. However, some of those things that we did allowed us to learn from them at an early age, which helped project us into the point where we are in life right now. Had we not learned some of those lessons that we keep trying to shield our kids from, a lot of us wouldn't be here today. So I think, one of the things that we can really do is to be an example to our children. And not only that, I think that we need to communicate, be able to communicate with our kids. Coach threw up the book a couple of times. And if I get it right, what's the one about communicating with the kids? It's two of them.
There's two of them. I get them. Go ahead.
Keep but those, like, right there, people, a lot of times we talking to people, but we're not really communicating. So being able to
that's one. Keep going. You're good.
Yeah, so being able to effectively communicate with our children is important too, because we're open, we're honest. If they feel like they can come to talk to us about certain things, it's going to be better for them. It's going to be better for their identity and them learning and growing and becoming the type of person that they want to be and who they should be.
Yeah, it's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. And in conjunction with communication, so the first one for adults.
Turn it over.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
There you go. It's
I
all
have,
good. You
yeah,
got your glass.
my camera was dyslexic.
There you go.
So the first one is Everyone Communicates, Few Connect by John Maxwell. Some of you guys already got that book. It's a great resource for you to help you take a long, hard look at yourself. And when it comes down to communicating with kids, how to talk to your kids, how to talk so your kids will listen, and listen so your kids will talk. I think both of these books, and I think you find them all on Amazon, by the way. I think both of those books are great reference points. And I think the idea is for us to consistently become a great communicator. Because I say so only works when they're kids. As they get older, right, it's important for teenagers to understand the why, because this is how they mature into adulthood. So as they become, I'm gonna mute you there, Timothy, I'm sorry. So as they become adults, they now are understanding what parenting look like. So don't be intimidated by the why after they leave the young toddler age. Once they hit adolescent age, it's okay to explain it. And if you got to put a condition to it, go do what I tell you to do first, and then I tell you why. Right? That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Right? Because again, we have to instill discipline within the household. I think another thing that parents must do, you have to teach your children how to regulate their emotions in the home. Because if you don't do it in the home, they're going to be several train wrecks when they get out into the world. And the world could care less about their tears. I'm just being honest. So do the heavy lifting now, because I think it's important, because there's so many, and I know we've been using the word emotional intelligence for some years now, right? And I've said probably about 3-4 years, right? Heavily. But even with that being said, I still don't believe we have a good understanding of it. So we got to teach our children how to emotionally regulate themselves so that when they get to the point, they don't spiral out of control when adversity happens. That's important. Um, you know what? Uh, I knew that this conversation was going to be like this. Young Timothy, you had something?
Yeah, you said a lot of stuff, man. But I had to try to take notes. But I wanted to go back real quick to when you talked about our belief system has to be built on the doctrine of truth. But then you talked about the conversations that we have beforehand, right? Before we have kids, let's talk about what parenting look like. Let's talk about what we want our child to look like. Because first, let's be honest. The first thing you have to know that you're not just raising your we're putting small pieces together as we go along. But the idea for me is, what do I want this to look like in the end? What is my goal of raising this child? What kind of adult am I trying to raise? Not what kind of child I'm trying to raise. Because what you teach them, as why your child cries so much at 2, 3 years old, because you let them cry up until that point,
Hmm.
and you ran to their need every single time instead of letting them figure small things out. You know, so you left them on a pacifier too long. So now that they two and they don't have a pacifier because they don't look good, they crying. Right? These are real things. But in that conversation that we're having beforehand about, and I think we should have a few conversations pre-marriage, really,
Mhm.
and that is that's do we have the same belief system? Period. Do we believe in the same value? Is is this where your baseline is at? Because that's where mine is at.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
Yeah, if we don't have the same belief system, well, there ain't no marriage. We're
Yeah,
unequal. We're unequally yoked.
and it's gonna fall apart.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, sir. Please continue.
No, you're 100% correct. Because my next statement on that is we have to be honest in our disagreements. How many of us get into and we've all been there. I'm not the only one, and that's not on my first marriage still, right? And the reality is because we were not truthful in the beginning about red flags, whether they were things we observed or things we talked about. There's a lot of times where we say, yeah, yeah, girl, I agree with you, kind of, and we didn't. And there's times where she said she agreed because we went along to get along. But after a while, you realize I can't live the rest of my life getting along with this. I don't agree with that. And
Mm.
now we created chaos. and wonder why. Oh, he was just this and she was just that. Well, you weren't honest about what wasn't right, what you didn't believe in, what you didn't want, and you thought it would just what you thought you was just gonna get used to it. If you don't like this, you don't like it.
Absolutely.
Be
Now,
honest. Go ahead.
I just want to jump in on you guys brought up that verse, 2 Corinthians 6:14, be not unequally yoked, but it says with unbelievers. And people like to take that to be a relationship thing. It's a relationship period thing. But the unequal part is not that they believe the same thing you believe, but that they are leading you and you're not leading them, because the yoke goes on 2 ox, and you had an old ox and a young ox, and the old ox steered it. He taught the young one where to go. And that's what we need to do. We need to get with people who actually know where we're trying to go, but we want to
Talk
get
rolling.
with Johnny come lately, don't know nothing, but he hot right now and he's popular, but he don't know nothing. So what's gonna happen? You're gonna end up in a ditch. I'm off my
Said,
soapbox.
no, you're good, man. You're good. I didn't want to go into that level of detail, but you're right. Bottom line up front, if we don't have the same belief system, we ain't even entertaining getting together. That's just what the truth is. And I think that's the thing that has to be taught in the home. Because if you don't do that, you're setting the condition for nothing but frustration and anxiety moving forward. And two people who don't have the same belief system, I don't see how they're going to be together, for a long time. And then, I'm gonna say my last piece, and then I really need to get after the chats because we've been neglecting these people, and they putting it down, man. I just want to give a shout out to them. And I see my new friend Gary up in there, brother, Pastor Gary. We're gonna want to reach out to him and invite him to the family as well. But I think the other thing that young Timothy, you mentioned honesty. We got to teach our kids honesty. If our children know that we're lying to our spouse, then we're teaching them that lying is okay. I'm just gonna put that out there and leave it right there because let's start on these chats. So Michelle says dysfunction and learned behavior within our culture. I'm going to say without any explanation, yes. Your thoughts? So I got 1, 2. Roland says yes.
Yes,
Timothy,
and I think,
Yes.
and that's why we have to go back. You can't learn where you're going until you learn where you come from.
absolutely.
And when we see, we can map out the dysfunction that we have in this country. I
Yeah.
mean, we can map it out, and then that's why, like people talk about police brutality, it ain't just started.
And I
Boom,
think one of the
Emancipation Proclamation,
Uh,
police brutality. They go
Mhm.
hand in hand.
Yeah.
like
one thing that,
can
go ahead.
go ahead.
I'll say one thing that's go back to that one coach, because
sorry.
one thing that stood out to me was that word survived. So we have survived. So I mean, it's a difference between just surviving and live. Like that's exactly what we've been doing. We just been surviving, and many people haven't been living. They've been just surviving, and it's because of this learned behavior within inside of the culture.
Yeah, and it cleared up. If you've been a part, I think it was the financial literacy conversation. I put up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we talked about the different echelons. Survival is at one of the lowest. I think you got psychological needs, and then you got survival needs. Survival is where you're just doing the things that you just need to survive, right? You're not applying any intellectual thought into your behavior, and you're just surviving. In other words, you're barely getting by. And a lot of us, I'll be honest with you, I was raised in an environment to where we survived, but I had to overcome that. And again, I'm not ashamed to say that that's where I came from, but I am so happy to understand right now that I'm not there and my children are not there either. Not saying that I did it perfectly, but they still got some things they got to deal with, going forward. But again, we have to teach children how to tap into that, not just having life, but having life more abundantly. We have to help them to understand what that means. Look like Brother Roland want to tap in, or Uncle
Yeah,
Young
yeah.
Timothy.
Because when we talk about survival, I always say I always lived check to check, check to check, check to check, and then never had enough. We have to get out of survive mode and get into thrive mode. We have to learn how to thrive. Take care of your money, and it'll take care of you. Take care of your responsibilities. Your children the same. If it's it's the whole reaping and sowing thing. What if you reap bad habits, if you reap bad benefits, you gotta. It's like if you can't sit up there and bury some egg. My wife got a garden in the back. She has some eggplants. I didn't know what they were back there, but she can't plant eggplants and expect tomatoes to grow. And that's the same way with our habits.
Absolutely, absolutely. Shout out
Man,
to Uncle Junior Mom, man. We love him.
man, y'all jumped on exactly what I was about to say. So I just want to, man, y'all killing it, man. Y'all killing it.
Oh, I mean, it's the thing, and I think it's important for us to understand that we have to teach that to our children. We have to teach them how to tap into their creative nature. Like most kids don't even realize they have a creative nature, right? We have to set the conditions for them to explore, discover the
Yes.
higher existence of who they're being, move out of that survival mentality into that place where they're flourishing. But if we don't talk like that at home, they're not accustomed to that when they go around somebody and they hear them talking. Or the other side of that is that they become infatuated with it. And then they try to find a way to use it to, as you know, they would say in the days, get rich quick. No, there's no such thing, right? There is no such thing as something for nothing.
Mhm.
You're going to have to sacrifice something to get what you really want in life. And that has to be taught in the home. Like we should not be just leaving them out there flapping in the wind. So great question, Michelle. And thank you for asking that. And the reason why I didn't want to provide explanation, because I know these three brothers would be all over it. Let me see. Go ahead, brother.
I was and can we be honest? And let's put the obvious on the table. We started in a level of disadvantage, right? Right. How many years was it from 1619 to emancipation? Right, and then from emancipation through Jim Crow, through redlining, through till we finally got the 14th Amendment, to where they have to do fair business, right? Um, we operate off a disadvantage. We understand that as a truth. We understand that as of right now, we know that Big Mama might not have had the tools to teach us certain things. But that's not the excuse no more.
Right. You can't let it cripple
And
the next generation.
and exactly, we now that we stated it, we put it out there on the table. Now let's leave that and figure out how do we go forward from here.
Yeah.
Because somebody in the back of their mind while we're talking is saying, but we're operating out of it. We absolutely are. But we have to operate. We have to, in order for us to do more than just survive, we have to move with higher expectations.
Absolutely.
See, and I grew up in Detroit where we have a large Arabic population. And when they come over to the country, they don't have to pay taxes for so many years. They get loans. They get a lot of benefits that we don't get. They can have businesses and receive food stamps. But they also have the mindset that I'm going to bring my family over and we will we don't live in the same place. We will get established and then you get a business and you establish and we're going to bring more family over. So they are a communal people. We have to go back to being a communal people. We have to have that tribe mentality that what goes on in my neighborhood, if this ain't my family, what is it? Everybody has to be my family. I have to raise up the standard for everybody. I can't allow little Johnny across the street to fail and then just talk about it. I got to be able to reach out to him too.
So can I ask you a question then, brothers? So then do I still kick TJ and Messiah out the house at 18?
No.
Well, whatever you and your wife agree upon, that's gonna be my answer.
No,
but no, seriously, no. You know, in my belief, and this is, and I want to say this the right way. In my belief, you don't kick a child out; you help them to move out.
You prepare them before you get to that point.
Absolutely, that's just my belief.
Yeah.
Now, if they're a full-grown adult.
You pause. Uh-oh. Yeah, I don't believe
And
you kick a child out. I believe that you prepare children to become adults and help
Oh,
them.
28.
There you go. Okay, you
All
back
right.
now.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
uh-uh.
He done got.
I thought it was me for a second. I was like, oh Lord, here you go.
Yeah.
But
Sorry,
nah,
I had
but the
opportunity
re
sometime.
You back?
you know, I think he's in.
I
Yeah.
don't know. Uncle Junior walked away and everything went haywire. No. All right. So, yeah, if they're a full grown adult, 30 years old, that's a whole different conversation. But 18, 19, even 20, especially if they're going to college, if they're in college, you don't have to go no place. You right here. That's just my belief system, though. But I don't want to push
and
that on anybody else.
and here's the thing too. If I decide to build a business, a restaurant or a store or whatever the case may be, why are we the only ones that want to? Once I kick them out the house, those resources coming from that business has to go to this house and that house. So now it's spent a little more.
Yeah.
You know, he talked about they have that tribe mentality. They come over, they start businesses, and they live together until that business is making a certain amount of money for them to branch.
Yeah.
And then when they do move, some man, they just opened up a Suit City in Killeen about 3 or 4 years ago. And there was a Suit City in Lawton, Oklahoma when I was stationed at Fort Sill. I found out that the guy that started the Suit City here branched off from the people who started Suit City in Lawton. You know, and this is an Arabic uh, community of people. Yeah, he moved away from the family and branched the business.
Hmm.
But we tell them go make your own way.
Yeah, we got to have something to pass on from generation to generation. It has to be something in the family. I kind of want to touch on this, and again, I apologize. I mean, this is such a great conversation. I don't want to leave the people in the chat as though we are not observing what you're saying. I am literally watching everything that's come because I got both screens going over here, and I'm seeing the value that you guys are adding. So I greatly appreciate all that you're doing. And so thank you for that. I want to touch on this real quick. I just want to get on this and get off real quick. I like the fact that she brought the Holy Spirit to the conversation as being a great teacher, but I think it is a progressive level of awareness that you usher them into understanding the Holy Spirit. Because this young man at the age of 8, 9 years old, when I seen a lady fall on the floor doing the funky chicken, I got scared. And they said it was the Holy Ghost. I ain't want no ghost around me. I'm just being honest. So you can't, like, I'm telling you, you have to usher them into understanding because I had no idea what the Holy Ghost was. And then in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to go back to church no more. That scares me. I'm done. So I wanted to touch on this real quick. Thank you for bringing this to the conversation. And I think you're right, but it has to be a progressive level of understanding according to the doctrine. They need to understand where the Holy Spirit fit in, what is the purpose of the Holy Spirit, and what the Holy Spirit will do. I think sometimes in some people, you also need to help them to understand what he won't do either. Right. I think that's important because people look at TV and they start looking at ghosts and goblins, especially around Thanksgiving time. I mean, not Thanksgiving, Halloween time. Right. Hey, man, there's
You
ghosts and
said
goblins. Thank
goblin.
you.
Oh, yeah, I got
Yeah. And so they might confuse the theatrics of ghosts with the Bible as well. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick. Man, you guys are just tearing it up. Thank you guys for all the value that you're adding. And Erica, I did not forget about you. I want to make sure I say that. Man, shout out to Pastor Gary Smith, man. Great to see you, brother. Welcome to the family. Hello, Sharina Fraser Miller. Always great to see you. Thank you for joining us this evening. Um, Listen, I want to, because I'm scrolling through and making sure I'm, answering all of the questions. I don't want to leave any question unturned. Um, I just I knew that this was going to be a multiple week conversation. Just to give you guys a snapshot, we only talked about identity dysfunction. Next is relational dysfunction. After that is parenting dysfunction, and then we're going to talk about elders. So as you can see, that this is going to be a progressive conversation. I'm thinking at least 3 weeks as well. So with that being said, Erica, that is the answer to your question on Friday nights. This is how we are coaching and mentoring young adults. It is for men, but it is for everyone. right? Because I think women can become knowledgeable about the lesson that we are teaching the young men. But I also think, on the other hand, these young men, we're pushing them so that they can listen to a woman's platform so that they can hear the lessons being taught over there as well. And then the end state is to come together so that both men and women can have, highly intelligent conversation, not conversation that is based upon ego, not conversation that is based upon survival, sexuality, none of that stuff. And also, with that being said, each of us do our own individual thing. I'm a certified coach and trainer. I know young Timothy, he teaches young kids in basketball. Uncle Junior already said that he's a school counselor, and Roland is just a man. I mean, I can't stress that enough. Roland does everything. He's papa, he's daddy. I mean, he's the guy rolling down the street. Like, he does everything. So this is how we're giving back. It is our goal, and I know me and Uncle Junior talked about this. Like, we want to get together so that we can, get a group of young goal oriented men together and just fellowship, probably go someplace like Vegas or whatever that looks like. And then we can actually help them to achieve their dreams. I am also working on a couple of other conversation monthly meetups. I have one monthly meetup with Anita Simpson where we talk about relationships. I'm working on a monthly meetup right now with Dr. Easley, and we're coming up with something. I shot him a title right earlier today. I'm waiting on him to get back. And the idea that I came up with is called um, discovering. I can't even remember how I structured it. And discovering is spelled with the word disc in it. So it is discovering your potential. That's what it was. So discovering your potential. I'm also working on one with Tanisha Bowman, and the title of that is called Dream Manifestation. So this is what we're doing to mentor and help young adults be better than what we were. We made a lot of mistakes. I'm just going to call a spade, right? We can say that we weren't taught. Yeah, at some point, we have to realize that that's an excuse. So, just like Roland said, we just got to be honest. We made some mistakes. Now it's time for us to correct the mistakes that we made, because if we don't put forth the effort, our grandchildren are going to suffer. Our great grandchildren are going to suffer. So, at some point, we have to draw a line in the sand right now so that we can prepare our community to be better than what we found it and better than what we left it. So, with that being said, gentlemen, I know we got that point. Please give us your last thoughts on identity dysfunction.
I think I go. Last points. Sit down. Whether you sit with your elders, whether you have a grandmother or great grandmother around, learn who you are. Do some research and find out about your people. Don't only look to find what Black history is during the month of February, but do some research, do some biblical research, start reading books. And that's one thing I appreciate my father for. He always gave me books to read and instilled in me a desire to search. And but yeah, the dysfunction piece, you don't have to raise your children like you were raised. You don't have to do what Big Mama did. You don't have to do any of that. Learn what was right, learn what was wrong, and do what's best for you. I apologize for my voice and everything, but I'm sick right now, but I had to be here.
I would say when it comes to identity dysfunction is um, start surrounding yourself with quality people. Look at men who are doing what they're supposed to do, and I'm not necessarily saying emulate them, but emulate the things about them that have substance. Um, Not necessarily how they dress, although image is and can be important. But look at their mannerism. Look at how they treat their wife. Look at how they treat their daughters. Look at how they treat their sons. Look at how they interact with people. Look at some of those things, and those are some of the men or the people in your life that you should try to emulate. And I'm not saying necessarily, like I said, trying to be like somebody else. But if you're kind of lost and you don't really know and have an identity about yourself, one place to start is to look at someone who you respect, someone who's doing similar to things that you may want to do in life, and who you consider an upstanding person. and then emulate some of the things that they do in their life.
Oh man, final thoughts, identity. Let me start by doing this, right? I'm sorry if there's any viewers or any listeners that don't look like me and my brothers on this panel, uh, in some shape or form, right? But look at yourself and then look at the world we live in. You have influence, and this is just a encouragement that I had to tell myself a few years back. You have influenced almost every aspect of gain in this culture, in this world, in this American society. There was a whole period of economic history to where they was trying to sell the black because of the buying power. And in that, the culture always takes from people that look like you. You find me a genre of music that can't be traced back to a black man or black woman. You you get what I'm saying? Even the way that we have popularized singing now, from the 60s to now, everybody's riffing and running because they emulate what we do and how we look and how we operate. So what does all of that mean? All of that mean if we begin to walk and operate as if we're not dysfunctional, I believe that we as a people will prosper in our doings. And identity dysfunction has caused us to look at a product. Roland can make this pen, and then somebody else come along and make the same pen and put a different name on it. 9 times out of 10, we will look at the one that Roland made as if it was a lesser grade because of who made it. When you look at yourself in the value of who you are and take value in what we do, that tribe community, we have to begin to function together. And me personally, I think it starts with this gender war we got going on in the black community. Our women are the only women in this country being taught to dislike the men. And and vice versa. We're all being taught some form of this, but we have to learn to come back together. We have to find a couple, like he said. I think a lot of it starts with our relationships, with our families. We can put our families back together. I I promise you, if that woman takes a chance of trusting you to lead and you take care of her basic needs and her emotional needs, she'll continue to trust you as you grow. But we have to teach that, and for us, we have to show that. So understand that there's value in everything we do. Everything we have done and given to the society has become a norm for this society. Pop music has become very popular non-black music genre, but somebody tell me who the king of pop is. You get what I'm saying? And we can follow this thing all along. This value, there's value in your identity. Let's live in it. Let's thrive in it more than survive. That's it.
I love it. I love it. Listen, I'm gonna try to keep mine simple. I think I've been doing too much talking all night. Um, I think it's important that we realize that number one, our children need us. Our children need the best version of who we are, which means that I cannot choose complacency. If you've seen one of my social media posts, I used young Timothy. We was talking about the complacency mindset last week, right? We cannot choose complacency. The minute that you choose complacency, somebody else is going to suffer because of that decision that you made. We have to choose to continue to progressively grow from where we are. This is why I set the conditions by saying wherever you are when your child hit that young adolescent 17, 18-year old, That's how you're going to launch them out into the world. That is their floor. So when Roland said that you can't just use that as an excuse, it's their responsibility to grow from there. And as they're growing, we as parents, we're coaching and mentoring. We're just not letting them flap out in the wind and tell them stuff like, "Oh, well, I had to figure it out, so you got to figure it out too." That's crazy. Like that's your child. You should want to see them like achieve the best version of themselves. Wait, newsflash, the best version of themselves will come through the lens of the identity that they actually have, which is revealed through both mama and daddy. So we cannot just say, "Oh, well, I did everything." No. Swallow your pride, reach out to that young man because he might be still prideful and he don't want to, close the gap or, swallow his pride and come and want to be a father at that particular point in time. Tell him he needs help. It ain't going to hurt. I promise you it's not going to hurt. If men, if you have the child, reach out to that woman. Pastor Gary Smith said that the other night. He reached out to his ex and said, "I need your help." That was the perfect response. Absolutely. We got to learn to set aside this thing called ego, like Chris likes to say. I believe that Jesus Christ sacrificed his life on the cross so that you can sacrifice your ego on your cross. You learn to sacrifice your ego, and what you will find is that relationships will improve. And that, my friends, is what we'll be talking about tomorrow. So, I mean, not tomorrow, next week. So, listen, Roland, look at me tomorrow. I ain't going to make it tomorrow. Listen, I just want to extend a great appreciation to you guys. Shout out to Antoine, the artist. Christopher, good to see you, brother. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for all of your words of wisdom in the chat. We love you guys. We appreciate the value you said you actually added. Shout out to all the moms out there, and then shout out to everybody who was out there listening that we haven't had the chance to speak to because we haven't seen you in the chat, but that's okay. You're still appreciated because we know that you could be any place else on a Friday night. You could be at the lounge, like I just learned tonight. That's what they call the clubs now, right? The lounge. I didn't know that. You could be at the lounge, but you chose to be here with us. And I want to make sure that I extend a great appreciation to you guys. Just like I want to tell these young men on this panel how much I appreciate them. Man, there's so much value added and just so fun to just collaborate with. So shout out to these guys as well. Listen, every Friday night, 8 p.m. right here, the Hearts of Men podcast. We love you. Have a great weekend, and we will see you again next Friday. With that being said, have a great weekend.